Wow. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We started a little early just to make sure that tech was working, and it looks like we're good. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up and say hello. Megan, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor to have you.
Thanks, Nate. Good to be
That's
here.
awesome. Especially in times like this, I wanted to start before we go into the full format. I just want to acknowledge that I think you've done such an amazing job holding a really safe, constructive, creative space in your photography group, your private group of photographers called Rise to the Top. I've been following for several months now, and even in this transition period, you've done such a good job. So thank you so much for doing that. What I want to acknowledge is that depending on where you're at today, depending on where you're at this hour, I want us all to be empathetic of there's a lot happening, a lot changing. It's really scary one minute, it's really exciting, invigorating for the other minute. And wherever you're at, know that just doing whatever you want to set out to do today is good enough. Because I don't want this to be another way that we overwhelm ourselves, but instead to inspire.
Yeah.
So, Megan, thank you so much for being here. Give us a little bit on what your approach to staying productive in these uncertain times.
hmm Well, as time management goes, I would say I'm time management level master.
Hmm.
And so it's always been just in my nature to want to structure things and to create some productivity and always to be optimistic. So I'm looking at this time as like, how do I use this time? How can I make the most of it? And obviously had to change gears 180 degrees and start
Hmm.
embracing some things that I didn't even know were on the docket and now are part of my everyday life. So it's been exciting for me because I look at the opportunity of time and I say, what are going to be my priorities? So I created. I actually I probably posted about this in my group about having a manifestation post. And what I mean by that is I've decided in my mind that come June 1st, I am going to post XYZ on Facebook. And so I wrote that all down and I wrote it as if it's happened right now. Like I'm so excited that I was able to accomplish this. My team and I got our heads together and created that. We have made all these opportunities come real by doing this. So I kind of just defined out what does success look like for me during this time. And that means that once I have the goal in mind, I can just back it up and say, then what needs to happen weekly? What needs to happen daily? How can I use my best energy in the best ways? So that's what I did. It all started from priorities and goal setting, and then I just backed it up into the minutia until I had a game plan.
I love it, guys. This is just a teaser. I knew we were going to get immediately into value.
We
It's
just
so
dive
great.
in.
It's so good. So I wanted to play our intro and then go into our three rapid fire questions that kick this all off. And then we're gonna talk about some high level strategy like Megan just shared. We're also gonna get into the weeds and share some tactical things you can be doing right now to work on your marketing, to build connections in your marketing, and we're just going to talk through it. I think it's going to be really good. So stick around, guys. Okay, my favorite first one. How long have you been in business? This one surprised me.
Yeah. So the answer is 10 years, just about 10 years. 2009 is when I started horribly. In 2009, I started as a shoot and burner and realized really quickly that doesn't work. And then 2010 is when I started officially. So I changed to Megan DiPiero Photography at that time. And so hence here we are, 2020, almost 10 years.
Congratulations. That's a huge
Thanks.
milestone. In those 10 years, how many, you've grown a lot, learned a lot. How many sessions did you shoot last year?
Last year was a quieter year for me because I was doing a road tour with education, but I did end up photographing 121 clients, and that amounted to about, I believe it was 60 shoot days, because my goal
Okay.
was that I wanted to do 5 days a month shooting. So that was that. And now we are just ramping up. Our plan before it got derailed was to
Yep.
have 3 clients a week, and we're just on pause. And then we fully anticipate that we'll be back to 3 clients a week as soon as we get going again.
Awesome. And then your average, your sale per client.
Oh, that's a fun one. It's about 5,100. It's 5,125. And that grew a lot last year because I was focusing on smaller quantity, but having really high average. We do anticipate that'll drop a little just as we add volume, but we're hoping for a 4,000 plus average for this year.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I love asking those questions just as a quick baseline. I think that if you guys don't know Megan already, she's created an amazing business for herself. And I want to take a minute, this was off script here, just to acknowledge, Megan, I don't think you knew this, but I've got my master's in education. So I'm like a trainer and educator first. And what I like to point out to our industry is it's very common in other industries too, where just because somebody's good at a thing, they've created their own amazing success, right?
Hmm.
It do, we make the mistake a lot of times to thinking that that means that person's going to be really good at teaching or
Right.
coaching or empowering others, and it's actually a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was so impressed with what you've done, not only in your own business, but in the way you are celebrating the success of the photographers you are coaching. So, if we could take a second just to let you highlight your $10,000 club and what that
Yeah.
means, because I think
Going
I'm
there.
curious how many of those are there? Those are the first three questions were about your own portrait business, which I
Yeah.
think is vital to the success you've had as an educator,
Hmm.
but also some of the things you've done to systematize. Because I think that as I go to help people, like I get asked all the time, hey Nate, how do I get a live studio with lights and cameras and so I can go live to Facebook like this? And it's like, it's subconscious stuff that I have to, like, I can't just vomit it and people understand it. I have to make it a system, which you've done. So let's start with, what is the $10,000 club?
Yeah, so it's called the 10K Club, and it's very fun. We started it purely by accident. I remember the day my husband and I were on vacation in Michigan with our family, and one of my students called up in the middle of nowhere, Texas, like tumbleweeds and, longhorns and all this stuff. And she called up and she said, "Oh my God, Megan, I just had a $10,000 sale." And this was about 3 months after she'd taken a workshop with me. So Eric said, it'd be really fun. What if you just flew out there and took her out for dinner to celebrate? And I was like, oh, that would be really fun. So we kind of like made it a three-legged journey that Eric went home with the kids. I went out to visit the wonderful Christy Gibson, and she's fabulous. And she just knocked it out of the park, surprising herself most of all, not me. I was like, hey, you got this, Christy. So what happened was we just started saying, well, let's make that be a part of our culture. Is that a $10,000 sale is normal? And the best comment I heard, Hannah Marie said that I normalized $10,000 sales, and that helped our community understand that that's possible, and it's even expected that you will and can achieve this. So this year we had, prior to being grounded, I had 25 visits on the books from this year so far. We were anticipating doing 50, and so we'll see where the rest of the year goes. But it really just happened that people could, the world record holder. I went down to Australia, was my last visit. That Melitza did a sale of $15,000 Australian dollars, and she ended up doing that like the week after. So sometimes people do it as quickly as, like, they'll take the course within a
Yeah.
weekend, within a week, they'll have a $10,000 sale. And now people are almost like, I feel it coming, I feel it cooking. So it's very exciting. And it's just amazing that when you rally together with people who are believers and achievers, that you can see what's possible for everyone, and you open up your mind to these new possibilities.
I'm spacing on the runner. Is it that the first person to break, was it like the 6 minute mile or something?
I think it
Four
was
minute mile?
4 minutes.
It's a
Yeah.
4 minute mile. But as soon as one person does it, it makes it attainable. And I
Yes.
think that's what's so useful in your education is not only are you breaking down the success that and the tools and the systems that you do,
Mhm.
it's applicable to other photographers in their variety of locales around the world.
Any place
Okay,
and any genre, even every genre, every city, it's possible everywhere.
I love when in my previous life we would talk about a good salesperson. Sorry, a bad salesperson with a great process
Hmm.
will always outsell a great salesperson with a bad process.
True that.
And I think that's what you see time and time again is that initial like surprise, like, oh my gosh, this actually works. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're no longer surprised. You're like, yeah, I know. You
Yeah.
do these things and it works.
And it's funny
uh,
that photographers all know that we have to practice our craft, right? We are the
mhm.
first to, we'll do things like competition, we'll study workshops, we'll, bring in new lightings, test new gear, all that stuff. So we know that we have to practice our art. But not everyone understands that you need to practice your business art, and that it isn't a magical thing when someone is successful. It's because they put in the time, they mastered the scripts, they created the work, and they practiced it. And then lo and behold, the more I practice, the luckier I get, right? So it's
Yeah,
just about like putting in the work.
it is like the 10-year overnight success, as they say, right?
Yeah, of course.
Uh, it always seems like, oh my gosh, it's just so easy. Nope, you put you and everybody else in your program that's created this. It is all, yes, having the plan, the path, the steps clear is important, but execution is the part that matters the most. Okay, so let's get into some value here and some of the big lessons that you've learned on your journey.
Mhm.
This one wasn't immediately apparent to me, but now that in hindsight, I think one of the biggest before and afters or transformations for you is in discovering the focus of headshots. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. It's been
So
huge.
let's walk us through that. How long was it before you figured that out?
It was probably 2 years into having a studio. So the
Okay.
first 3 years of my business, I was on location, beach photographer, very candid style, family photojournalist, right? And
Hmm.
that was a lot of fun. I loved it. I had great sales up to $5,000. And then I said, well, I'm switching over to studio. And that was a whole different story of evolution. But once I started doing studio, I was commiserating with my local photographer friends because for us, slow season is summer. I know everyone else in the country, slow season is winter, but we live in
Hmm.
Florida. So when it's
Hmm.
blazing hot, nobody
Hmm.
wants to go out to the beach because you're like photoshopping out sweat off dad's shirt. It's miserable. so, so we were just creepy crawling, slow business in June and July. It was horrible. And one time even I sent out a notification to my clients like with a promo, and it was right around 4th of July. And of the 30 emails I sent out declaring this promo, 21 got bounced back. So nobody's in town. It's horrible. So then, to my surprise, I was starting to just say, oh, well, everybody's slow. And if you guys have ever said these words,
Hmm.
start questioning that right now,
Hmm.
because I know
Hmm.
everyone says, oh, well, January's slow. Oh, well, February's slow. So I just accepted June and July are slow. But then I started to say, do they have to be slow? And I thought to myself, what are photographers doing in the slow season? When we're slow, what do? We go to conventions, we brush up on our marketing, we create a plan. In other words, we're thinking about business. So then I said to myself, if I'm thinking about business during the slow time, stands to reason my clients are thinking about business too. So
Hmm.
I launched the endeavor of headshots, and it would just took off like gangbusters. And so quickly, like I was having, like on my slowest month ever, I had a $46,000 month. So I went from like nothing and wanting to throw in a towel and just go away like everyone else does to, oh my God, this is my highest month ever. And so
Yeah.
consistently now we're actually seeing that our what used to be our slowest months are now our powerhouse months. So anyone who puts headshots into motion, you can expect that kind of dramatic change for yourself too. Assuming it's done right, assuming you've got the craft and the
Right. The
practice
system.
down.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, that is so cool. So one of my favorite things about that I like chatting about when with headshots is oftentimes you're selling to a business owner, to
Yeah.
somebody who needs this, or for somebody who's a little bit more career driven or what have you. And when you're doing that, that oftentimes not only is it coming, they're making the purchase from a different part of their brain, they're
Yeah.
actually making the purchase from a different checking account. And
Yes.
can you speak to that? Is that accurate? You target this as a business expense, and how
Yeah.
does that help?
Absolutely. And I was just listening to Donald Miller the other day, and I wrote down his quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it was something like, it's easier to sell B2C because there is a need, there's a problem they have to solve, and you are the solution. And so when you can solve a need, and I call it lead with a need. The concept is always lead with a need. When you're marketing, what is the need? What is the problem you solve? And if you can connect that with your client's all in. So I just had to say, like, okay, what is the problem I can solve for you? And for me, the answer to that is that our clients, about 8 or 9 out of 10 of them, a big high percentage, they come in hating their headshot taken. They've had it done in the past. It's been horrible. They have insecurities. They've got baggage from past photography sessions gone wrong. And so when they come to me, I walk them through a process that's going to help solve all those problems. And then when I can assure them and say, hey, you're good enough, you got this, and I'm going to help you through. We got this and that that's going to solve this for you. When we go through that and they come to the other side, they become raving evangelists and they gladly part with their money because it's worth it. It becomes now an investment. Something they didn't think could be solved is solved. And so then that comes right out of the checking account. And also a lot of times my clients will do both. They'll say, I'm buying this for my business. And while I'm here, what about I just add boudoir? While I'm here, can my husband or kids come at the end? Yes. And so we will just multiply those sales by adding personal and business. And then you get access to both budgets.
I love it. I want to pause here. This is so good. I want to dig more into that, guys. But I want to say hi to everybody that's here. If you've got questions for Megan and you're live, or if you're watching the replay, go ahead and post them. We've got Jennifer here, Tracy, Isabel. Let's see. Pam says, can never get enough of Megan, her business mind, her genuine kindness and willingness to share. So good. Okay, so guys, keep those questions coming in comments. Let's dig into this. The cross-pollination. So a lot of times when I talk, I'm a huge fan of Donna Miller also, the goal of any marketing is to allow your strangers who don't know you at all to know, like, and trust you.
Yes.
And a lot of times what I say is it's really difficult for a business owner to trust us when we go to the market saying we do everything, right? And the next interesting part that I want you to talk about is while you're known for your specialty and so that you can efficiently get people to trust you and invest for headshots, you're always cross-pollinating also. Once somebody trusts you, then you have systems on the back end, not necessarily big and public out front, but behind the scenes where you are selling headshots to your family customers, you are selling family portraits to your business headshot customers, and back and forth.
Yes. Yeah, and that's actually a challenge we're undergoing right now because we're hoping that at the end of this, part of my to-do list is that we are going to launch a brand new website. So we're working through the copy and the structure of all that. And one of the things that we came to a conclusion on is that, yes, specialty, what we're known for is headshots. But yes, family is huge for our business. So interestingly, last year, while our highest volume of clients came from headshots, our highest revenue came from family. So our family average is 7,600. We can do about half the number of clients versus headshots and make even more money and pull up the average with family. So the easiest thing is that with family, I mean, everyone knows a family photographer, right? It's like you throw a rock, you're going to hit one of them, and there's going to be shoot and burners to compete with, and there's other luxury pros to compete with. And the thing is that when a client is on the search for a photographer, they want to go with the person they trust, but they're not going to just take a stab out of a dark. They're going to be like, who do I know? Who's been my photographer in the past? Who do my friends trust? So the more people in my community that I can serve through headshots, gaining that exposure and trust, introducing my client to the structure of pricing and process, then when they have to ask themselves who's going to be our holiday portrait pro, they think, oh, Megan does such an awesome job. And not to mention that so many family clients, especially because I market to women 40s and 50s with older children, it's not the same as you might hire a shoot and burner when you're like, this young 30-something-year-old hottie, right? And then suddenly you're 50 and you're like, I care about lighting. I care about posing. Please make me look good. My kids are always beautiful. Make me look good. So now they know Megan makes me look good. I trust Megan. And hey, my kids are going to look great no matter what. So I'm going to put them in front of her lens because she's going to make everybody look great.
You can just hear the solution selling in your language. It's so articulate. I love it. Okay, so let's move to the next. I could spend hours there, but let's go to. Before I do that, let's just review. So number one, focus up front, and maybe give us some examples of how in your marketing you've become known for headshots. Like what do you do and what don't you do so that brand resonates?
Well, the biggest piece of my marketing is in-person networking. And so twice a week, I'm always out face to face with human beings, meeting strangers, strengthening connections, whatever I can do to shake hands. And I think we will talk later about how when you can't shake hands, what can you do? But there are ways that I'm always out there connecting with people. So naturally, in a networking environment, what are people thinking about? Business. So it's very obvious segue for them to say, they say, what do you do? And I say, oh, I do this. Bring, and I show them my accordion card with all my beautiful portraits. Many portraits on that accordion card are headshots.
I
So
want to I want to interrupt you. How do you answer that question? Because I think it's important to have.
I literally don't. I don't. What I just said to you is what I say. They say, what do you do? And I say, I do this. Bring. That's what I
Ah,
show them my Because
love
why?
it.
We're visual media. Why do I have to have words for this? You are going to sell yourself on me when you see that, wow, you create beautiful portraits. And a fun little thing about me is that, like, as we're going through our portfolio right now, we're like, okay, how do we show the best of the best, all this stuff? And a lot of photographers have some gorgeous portfolios, especially if you photograph models or actors or like, young, beautiful people, your portfolio might look exquisite. But my portfolio is probably a step down from that. When I photograph people, I photograph real everyday people. So what I might be doing, if I can be crass for a moment, is I might be taking someone who considers themselves a 5 and I bring them up to an 8. And they love that. They love being that 8. And so when my photos go onto Facebook, as they do, because everyone changes their profile picture the moment they get that digital access, then their friends are saying, wow, I've never seen my friend look that great. Oh my God, she looks radiant. And the comments just come flooding in. You're beautiful, which is even more of the cherry on top, because I want my clients to have that feeling of, wow, it's their best ever. They're so appreciated and they feel that joy and love from their friends. So having that as part of the story too, it's like, again, I don't have to have the words. I don't have to have the elevator pitch. My images sell themselves, and the conversation becomes about, what are you interested in? It's not about what am I and what do I do for you. It's like, what do you like about this? And then they will tell me and use their own words.
Oh, so powerful. I love that. I missed the subtle detail there, but it's important. I'm glad I clarified. That's really
Yeah, I'm
cool.
glad too.
And I think we need to lean into our advantages as photographers. Uh, there's an opportunity for other small businesses to be able to do the same thing, because an image speaks so much louder. So of course, when you can just answer that question with this,
Yes.
says so much more than any words can ever say.
Yes.
But in some of your clients, do you ever? I know most of your business is coming into your studio. Do you ever do headshots or branding work
Sure.
for businesses, like with them doing their job in the field at all?
Yeah, personal branding's definitely been a big part of our business too. And so we do on location. Typically, if we have a personal branding client, we're photographing up to 4 locations. So it might be
Got it.
studio, your office, the beach, and the tennis court. It might be some wild card random thing that represents you. So we go out and we do that too. And typically, what we're looking for in a sale like that is we're looking for clients to spend from $4,000 to $7,000, and they do it gladly. And that's kind of another myth I want to break, because so many people say, like, have you ever said before, oh, realtors don't spend? Oh my God. Everyone who said that, please smack your hand right now. That is a total lie, because I have had so many realtors spend, up to $7,000 on portraits of themselves. And so you have to break yourself of that habit and break yourself of the industry fears, because they're invading your conscience and you have to be like, no, I'm doing my own thing over here. And I don't believe that limiting belief.
Totally. And I think there's an opportunity for realtors and for so many other service providers to get more than just a headshot, to
Yes.
get additional poses they can use in social,
Yeah.
in their marketing, in their portfolio. Donald Miller really leads with this. There's for making that great first impression. Yes, your headline matters, but for the hero image of your website,
Yeah.
to have you interacting with your clients and have you both be smiling
Yes.
is that's worth for some business owners several thousands of dollars, to have that one image of them happy with a client smiling. That it sets the social proof, it sets the validation that this person's fun, they know what they're doing. It's so powerful. Okay, so now let's talk prints, because I think this is another limiting belief I've come across in the headshot space. Is nobody wants wall art if it's just
Uh-huh.
all they care about is their LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Let's talk about maybe if you shared that limiting belief first and what that was like, and then what it's been like since you've realized that that was just a limiting belief.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of having coaches. I have coaches myself, and I had a coach one time, and he was saying you have to focus on wall art, and I really rejected that initially. I was like, no, you don't understand. I photograph headshots, or I photograph beauty portraits, or I photograph boudoir. Whatever was the answer in my mind was like, no, people photographing an individual only. In other words, only themselves in the photo. They do not want wall art. That's what I told myself. And I fired that back at my mentor. And I now
Hmm.
want to smack myself and be like, no, Megan, you were wrong. He was right. So
Well, you got to be right about it, but that's what I love. It's like I
yeah,
love saying people, you get to be right about whatever you want to be right about, and the
yeah,
universe will just say, "Here's the evidence." And so
yeah.
when you had that attitude, guess what? Nobody bought the wall art.
Exactly, exactly, because I didn't believe in it. So I had to
Hmm.
believe in it. And at the time, I
Yep.
mean, I was really happy with my average. It was $3,000 and it's just grown every year. And the reason why it grew is because my understanding of what is valuable to a client shifted. And the reason why that shifted for me is that I did what all photographers should do. I hired a photographer, right? If you haven't experienced what your service is, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle. So when I hired a photographer, the most fascinating thing, I hired my friend Tamara Knight. Her name sounds like Tomorrow Night, but it's actually Tamara Knight. She's awesome.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I hired her, and she did a portrait. And a lot of times photographers will just share the images like straight out of camera. And she shared an image with me. I had forever hated my hips, like super body dysmorphia. Like it's been a lifelong struggle. And I'm looking at this photo, and I love it. And I'm like, yeah, but you changed my hips, right? And she's like, no. And I said, no, because I don't look like that. Like, that's not how I look. She said, meaning the reason why I was saying I don't look like that is I'm like, no, I have elephant hips or whatever lie I was telling myself. And in this photo, all I saw was this gorgeous woman who happened to be me. And I said, no, 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 that you changed that. And then so she showed me and she's like, Megan, look, this is straight out of camera. This is what you look like. And it was just that she, well, masterfully posed me and brought me to a state of total confidence that I just really enjoyed, like looking at myself and seeing that reflection of myself. So we got that portrait. It is like in 3 different rooms right now. It's in
Hmm.
my studio and it's in my husband's office. And I think I had it in my bedroom too. And so 3 walls in my home, one portrait, because when I look at that photo, I'm like, damn, that's a good looking woman, right? You can say that about yourself. I'll allow it. So I look at that and I see that as a transformational moment in my life that I now appreciate myself on a whole different level. And yes, it started as I just wanted something simple for myself, beauty portraits, headshots, and it ended with a life change. So once I experienced that, I was like, guess what? My clients need this too. They need that reminder. And I have a lot of people, yes, they do come in with relationships, like maybe they're realtors and their husband's in business with them. Well, great, we can photograph that headshot and photograph you together. And so I do have lots of relationships that we celebrate, but we also celebrate the person by herself. And that has been such a big deal to my business. That's when the average really started to grow. But I had to be ready for it and I had to see the value in it. And then I could believe and then I could tell my clients about that story.
Yeah, because the end result, you are not just a photographer. You help create life transformation,
Yeah,
and
empowerment.
it's so powerful.
Mhm.
And I think it's sometimes I haven't had the words to articulate this, but I think a lot of limitations to getting some of those other averages are a lot of photographers know what things cost,
Yes.
and for some of us, kind of like here's this a crude analogy. Like I'm in technology, so sometimes a technologist will see something and they'll go, I know a cheaper way to do that. So
Yeah.
I would never pay that much. I'd be
Yeah.
embarrassed to pay that much on something.
Yeah.
But we forget that our clients, the rest of the world, doesn't know everything we know. It doesn't have time or the care to know all the stuff that we know.
Yes.
And we really, humans really, really value that kind of transformation when it's more than just a LinkedIn snapshot.
Yeah. And I think where you're going with this too, a good point to note is that it's service. That people aren't just
Hmm.
paying for an image, they're paying for the service and they're paying for the experience. And
Exactly.
we hired Jerry Gionis to do our shoot in Italy, 20-year
I saw
anniversary.
that. Yeah.
Total bucket list, had to do it, loved every minute of it. And he knows that photographers have access to all the same products. Like literally, I buy from his vendor, Graphy. I mean, that's normal for me, right? So, but when it came down to it, we wanted to pay for wall art. All that needed to happen was the invitation is there. Would you like me to complete this vision and create wall art for you? Yes. And in the past, I've tried to go the cheap route sometimes. I love the photos every bit as much. I've hired photographers more on like a shoot and burn type method. And, my photographer friends are quite elevated. So shoot and burn might look like 2,500, but it's still
Yeah.
shoot and burn.
Yep.
And so to have what happened is like the one shoot I did that I did shoot and burn, guess what? That lives nowhere. It is not physically printed anywhere because it's actually on my desktop right now. I could show you my very messy desktop, and it's like a folder that says, Megan, complete this. Because I said I was going to order it, and 2 years later, I never did. But the service of hiring Jerry several months ago, not several years ago, and now I've got wall art that's living on my walls. So people will pay for service because they value time. And that's who we want to find. We want to find the people that care for the total package experience, not just like, here, I need the LinkedIn image, but serve me, help me, give me my experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I love anchoring. It's such a good takeaway. Anchoring that grounding periodically the value of what we do by experiencing it ourselves first. So what a great way to lift each other up as a community
Sure.
to do that service for each other. Okay. So now let me play devil's advocate a little bit with maybe the listeners that are watching that have been dabbling in headshots, but are stuck with both their own experiences, their own beliefs about their clients not wanting wall art,
Yeah.
and maybe hearing some of that when they've attempted. They've heard some of
Yeah.
those objections from their clients, like, no, I don't need that. I just need a digital. What was your process, and what do you say to people in that transition?
Okay, so first of all, obviously you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you have to start
Mm-hmm.
there. If you can find a way to believe in it, your belief will start to rub off on people. And even if it doesn't, you're still going to see success. So what I found initially was when I started doing wall art, I was selling 30% of my individual clients who came in. I was showing 100% of my clients wall art designs, and
Okay.
30% were buying. And then
Okay.
what happened was, just like any other practice, the more I practiced it, the better I got. And so then it switched over to 50% of my clients are buying. And now with my family clients, I would say probably 80% of my family clients buy wall art, like a huge number, because that's relationships. I think relationships, it's really an easy sell to say, don't you want the people you love on your wall? Of course you do. But you want to see them every day. You love their photos and their smiles. But when it comes to yourself, what is the value in that? So another thing that changed things for me is that portrait I talked about of myself. That is the first thing people see when they walk in the studio. And you might say that's vain, but man, that is a sales tool. That's
Mm-hmm.
there. And it's also in the eye line of anyone who's getting hair and makeup done. So a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, who's that? Is that Megan? And my makeup artist starts telling the story, and she calls me out, and I tell the story of transformation for myself. So I've told that story 1,000 times, but it's like, and every time it sounds fresh to people because it's the first time they're hearing it. So you must believe, you must offer, show what you want to sell. Those are all the things that are going to make the difference. And just knowing that, like, if you show it, you are more likely to sell it is going to start changing things for you.
Oh, so powerful. Showing it in the studio. So when they're coming in, do you do in-person consults or over the
Yes.
phone consult? You do in person. So
Oh,
they're seeing it multiple times. Yeah. Yep.
mhm.
And then also one of the things I think is the baby step I keep harping on is for people to include images of wall art in
Yes.
their marketing, on your websites, in your stories, on your social media, so that when you start to attract people. So like if somebody walks into the Apple store for some AirPods, they're walking by all of the other stuff. Like, gosh, that new iPad looks sweet, or whatever it is. They didn't come there for the iPad, but they see it, they get to touch it and interact with it, and it makes you want it even more. So showing it in your marketing, digital, print, etc., starts to attract people who maybe weren't looking for prints to begin with,
Right.
but then their eyes are opened to what else is possible.
Yeah. And my most favorite story is that one time I went to a client, and she was convinced and was trying to convince me that she wanted nothing to do with wall art. And what
Uh-huh.
happened was I just kept normalizing it for her. Every word that I used talking about wall art was something that was just positive and also like created like this almost social expectation for her. So, for example, I'm like, well, okay, so where would you put the wall art? Oh no, we wouldn't do portrait art because we only do real art. I'm like, okay. And then but then our next conversation was, I said, okay, great. So she's like, well, what are we doing here today? I'm like, well, what we're doing is we're picking out your clothes for your shoot. I'm going to go into your closet and help you select those. And you know what most of our clients like to do is they like to dress to match the couch. And what I mean by that is they're thinking about, well, where will their portraits be displayed? And then we can dress to match the couch so that you can have a beautiful presentation if you choose to do that. And so that kind of got her ears perked up. She was like, oh, is that what most people do? Yeah, that's what most people do. And then, of course, on my way to her closet, we walk by different areas of her home. And, she had already told me we only do real art in the living room. But I found a nook she hadn't thought of. As we were walking by, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I want to look over here. Look at this wall right here. Now, I know this is on the access to your kitchen, but I kind of like that because that means you're going to be seeing it every day. What if we use this hallway section and we create a vertical collage display and we could have the highlights of your family memories there? And she was like, yeah. And then the third thing that happened that finally was the absolute cincher of the deal was that as we were picking out her clothes and the idea of dress to match the couch started filtering into her mind, she said, you know what, the Chicago home has the same color scheme too. And I'm like, oh, the Chicago home. Okay. So before you know it, we had dressed to match the couch. We got those color schemes down. We had a color scheme that was going to work for both homes. We had a wall picked out. She told me she was going to Chicago next week, and I gave her a homework assignment of taking pictures of those walls. And at the end of our work together, we had designed wall art for 2 homes, and it was $5,000 just added to the bottom line just for those wall art photos from a client who adamantly told me, I do not want wall art. So it's our job to be their guide and to give them new ideas and insight. And that they're not in our field. They don't know about what we know about decor possibilities and how to create stuff for the home. So sitting there and painting that picture for them is going to be the thing that changes stuff.
I just shut up because you just dropped so many good the words you used. I want to help set expectations for people who maybe missed it or who like Seshu just said and like noticed how powerful the words you just used were. Mm-hmm. They were polished. It took you years to be able to say things that way. Yeah. So if there's a part of this interview you guys review on replay or hit pause and go back, listen to those last 2 minutes, because each word, like let's match the couch, like that didn't come right away. But that anchor, that mental mnemonic is so powerful in making it normal.
And the other one to call out would be what our clients like to do, what most people do, what's popular with our clients, because then people want to do what people do. So if they can make themselves fit the mold, they're going to do that, unless they're absolute rebels. And if you ever get that sense, okay, you start playing to that. Well, we have these really creative clients who like to do this. We have some outside the box thinkers who think about it like this. And that's when I start selling like, larger than life metals and like really cool acrylic collages. And, so I'm tuning into my client and I have to speak their language and understand what fits their needs. It's not always going to be cookie cutter, but most times people will do what most people do.
It shows them the path, right? Yeah. I want to anchor this to one of my favorite lessons of Donald Miller's and I heard last year is sales and marketing is about, like, imagine my visual is you're across a really scary river. Mm-hmm. And you're saying your job is to get your clients to come and join you, right? Yeah. It's like, don't worry. Most marketing is like, yeah, it's fine. I'm a photographer. You don't see it, but the river is actually not that bad. There's like stepping stones. Just trust me. Come on over. Yeah. But nobody does. Yeah. So let's dig a little deeper. What I'm hearing you say is, when I hear other photographers get stuck with, what I've tried. I tried to offer it and they didn't want it. Right. And it doesn't mean they didn't want it. What I hear is that you have too big of a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. Where people are dropping off, it doesn't mean that they're not going to make it all the way. It means you need to add more smaller, safer stepping stones between where they're at and where you want them to be. And that's what you're normalizing it. You're talking about it at every interaction, from the very minute you see them and you meet a stranger at a networking event, to the consult, to the shoot, to planning for the shoot. All of those steps are stepping stones, making it normal, making it safe, making it the expectation that this is just what people do.
Yeah. You definitely have to take
So,
them along and solve that problem. And you have to solve the problem they have in that moment. Because like way back to the earlier question, what's my elevator pitch? My elevator pitch isn't I make wall art. My elevator pitch is here's what I do. Bring, and where do you find yourself in there? Because once I know where they're finding themselves in there, and once we have a point to start this conversation, we take it piece by piece. And it's all staged out, scripted out, so that I know where I need to take that person next. And I call it like putting on the headlights of your car. You want to be seeing 2 steps ahead, and you want that safe path. But it's like we have to just shine the light to take you to the next step and let you know what's 1 and 2 steps ahead of that. And then when we get to the next part, we take you 1 and 2 steps ahead too.
So good. Okay. I'm going to bring up Jennifer's question here as we wrap up. She says, while no one can predict business post-COVID, how do you see photographers doing business in the future? For example, do you think clients are going to feel comfortable having makeup professionally applied? We work so closely with our clients. How do you see this? So I'm going to let you gather your thoughts. That's a big one. But as we wrap up, guys, I'm still nervous. Like this is the most starstruck I think I've been on one of these calls. This has been so fun. I was really looking forward to it. I think your calendar is super organized and full, and so I had a lot of time to think about this interaction, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. We're going to continue chatting for a little bit longer about practical things you guys can be doing now, preparing for the recovery.
Yes.
But if you want to learn more from Megan, I highly recommend, we'll put a link here to join the group. Do you want to share a little bit about the resources you provide in the group?
Sure, yeah. So the group is Rise to the Top with Megan DiPiero. We're all rising to the top together. It's really cool. And the best resource we have is something that you'll always find linked to the top. It's an announcement post. You look for the link that says Mentor Archives. And when you go to the Mentor Archives, there are dozens of posts, and they're meaty. I kind of call them like each one is like an article, anywhere from 1 to 5 pages. And you can just use that resource by going through and saying, what strikes your fancy today? So you want to talk about time management? Here's that. You want to talk about sales? Here's a whole bunch of topics related to that. So you just kind of go through and you pick your favorite and you go in and you learn that way. And then if you want to get a deeper, more comprehensive view into anything, you can always go to megandipierocoaching.com, and then we have our full day workshops available there. But the archives is always a great place to start and to get inspired and move forward with some new information.
I think that's a good thing to point out. I think a lot of Facebook, love it or hate it, it's not the best. I think a lot of things can easily get buried because we over prioritize what's happening like right now.
Yeah.
But for better or worse, I think your private group has an amazing amount of resources totally for free. So one of the things I'm just curious about as you're sharing, I've noticed your copywriting I can tell you've definitely worked on it. And do you copyright in Facebook? Are you copywriting those longer posts somewhere else and then pasting it in? I'll get to reading and like, oh my gosh, I've been reading for like 4 minutes and I'm just on one post. This is all such good, meaty content.
Yeah, so it's been an evolution for sure. I think I started Rise to the Top in 2014 or 2015. I believe it was 2014. So shout out to anyone who's been with me that long. But I was just writing about one mentor post, I would call it, a month. And I just sort of was trying to attempt to answer whatever was the biggest flavor of the month. What are the questions I'm hearing people ask? What's making me curious? What am I inspired to answer in more depth? And so I would just go in and write that article, and then we just saved them. So at once upon a time, Facebook deleted half of them, and I almost lost my mind. So we had to go, and fortunately, pack rat that I am, I had them all saved as Word docs. So we went and re-upload them. So they will forever, now we own them, they're on our site, and so they'll always be there.
Good.
Yes, they're safe and sound now.
It's a good lesson everybody's always advocating for email and that you get to own it. Who knows what's going to happen to the audience you create on social. Okay, so now let's wrap up with something tactical. You have an activity or an interaction where you ask the audience to come up with 100 ideas.
Yes.
It started with marketing ideas, right? But you've since rebranded it. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so everyone always says, how do I get my next client? And they're thinking it's marketing. And the biggest thing I want to have people understand is that marketing stop thinking of it as marketing. Stop thinking of it as a strategy or a gimmick or an offer. You don't have to think of it that way. All that marketing is marketing is you take a stranger, you turn that stranger into a friend. Once they know, trust, and like you, they're your friend. Then you turn that friend into a client by giving them an invitation with something that's going to give them value. So here, come in and do this shoot. It's on me, whatever you need to do there. So you go from stranger to friend, friend to client. Client then tells their circle of friends. So now you have a whole new circle of strangers, and then those become your friends, and then they become your clients. So it's just this repeating cycle. So that is the cycle of marketing. And if you think of it as, I would almost rather use the word, Zig Ziglar calls it prospecting, that it's just about looking for the people you can serve. So if you think of it like that, I'm going to look, connect, and show value to the people that are in my community. That's a much better way of thinking of marketing. And then along those lines, I was like, well, how do you market right now? What does this look like right now in these times we're in? And the answer is, if you can tell your brain, this is not marketing, this is connecting. And don't just use this during this time, use this all the time. Every time I think about how do I get my next client, I think about how do I connect? How do I connect more deeply? How do I serve more needs? How do I answer more problems? How can I bring value to people? That's just connection. So when I go out and I say, what's my marketing plan? It's my connection plan. So we started the post 101 ways to connect as an idea of how do you, right now, you can't shake hands. So how do you connect across the internet? And it can be as kind as just your voice or a personalized text message. And one thing that we did, and this was my idea I added to the thread, was we started sharing coloring book pages. So we had, for our clients who have young kids, we know that young parents are probably losing their minds more than anyone else. You want to move forward, but you've got all this strife because now there's a child in your space that wasn't there a couple weeks ago, and you have all these extra duties related to that. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make their burdens less, and we thought, well, let's give them some entertainment. So we found our favorite pictures of all our families that have young kids from the last 5 years. It took all day, but we went out and we made a couple coloring pages, and then we just texted it to them. And in the process of that, not only did I text them, but I also sent a message of love and care. Hey, we're rooting for you. How are things? Or even something like, oh my gosh, Aiden's picture is so amazing. I know he's such a creative kid. I thought he might like this. Things like that. And so personally connecting, making it real, no copy pasting involved. It was a unique message for each person. And then they benefit from seeing something that brings them absolute joy, which is their kid smile. They love that. And then their kid gets like an activity. We had parents that were sharing pictures of their kids doing fun colorings. We had people posting online about, thank you for this cool thing, Megan. And it just really, our community loved it, our community of families, and they got a kick out of it. So now our next mission is going to be going back to that thread and saying, now what do we do for families with older kids? But we're going to find more inspiration in that thread.
Oh, so good. So yeah, well, you can find that all 100 ideas in that thread inside your group, right?
Yes, and you have to number them. So don't just write following. Come in and add a contribution and label the next number. I believe we're up to 89. So we're really trying to get to 101 and even more.
I've got a couple in there too that I want to end with. But first, I think the best insight I'm trying to offer in this uncertain time is the importance of being generous.
Yes.
It's coming from a place of abundance and generosity. So for two reasons. Number one, if we look back at other times in our lives or other people who've gone through really hard times, from a neuroscience level, our brains are remembering things so much more with so much more fidelity. Like the details of what's happening and who was there for them and which brands, which companies, big and small, how they behaved, how their friends behaved, right? We're going to remember how each other behaved in these moments more than we ever will remember just what happened maybe 2 months ago. Right. And so it's an opportunity to ask yourself, how do you want to be remembered by your community, by your clients? And if we start, so that's reason number one, because it's just an opportunity to be remembered in a way you wouldn't normally be remembered. Number two, I think it's a great mental health hack.
Yes.
When we come from a place of how do I give,
yes,
it quiets the part of our brain. It's like, oh gosh, I'm going to run out of toilet paper. I got to go buy a bunch of stuff. Like we can't be selfish and selfless at the exact same time.
And let me tell you, that day was probably my most joy-filled day since we've been on lockdown, because all day I was writing love notes and gratitude notes to my whole community. And just like as I looked at the picture, I was having the same experience the mom was. I was like, oh gosh, what good memories that shoot was. And just finding a way to share love with every person. It was the best day ever. It was a hard day. It was tedious. It was a lot of work, but the reward was completely there for me. And even if my clients got nothing out of it, which I know they did, it was just worth it for me. It was a great
Yep.
activity.
So great. Okay, so I think one of the ideas I posted there is like a business angle.
Yeah.
And for those of you looking for projects, so one point I want to add here is that I think it's cool to see this trend, the Zoom shoot it's cropping up, trending in the boudoir community. I've even saw Nicole Spangler did one with a high school senior. Such a creative way, whether you're selling it or not, just a great way to be creative and find passion and creativity in the tools we have and to be remembered, right?
Yes.
I think that if we start with generosity first in the next few weeks, when it does come time to offer some creative offer, whether it's selling prints or selling products back to our existing customers or gradually starting to open our doors again, that is going to be so much more effective if you have made that touch, that give from a place of generosity. So one of the ideas I shared on there from a business perspective, if any of you have private Facebook groups or blog posts you need content for, go to your community. Step one is go to your community, ask who are your favorite small businesses in our city.
Yeah.
Because every small business is on everybody's minds right now. And so you'll get some empathy, some community spirit. People will share, oh, I love this. I hope they make it. We got to show our support. Use that list of small business owners that your followers like rave about as a way to get your foot in the door with those owners. Say, hey, my audience loves your donuts.
Yeah.
My audience loves your florist shop. Could I interview you for my blog?
Yeah.
Could I do a live show to my private Facebook group? Oh, you're like a health and fitness coach, or you're a lingerie shop, whatever it is that's specific to your niche. Come do a live show like this using a simple tool as a way to be generous to that business owner, and you will have a relationship for years by sticking your neck out that way and being vulnerable and generous. Okay. Anything else? Are there any other
I
fun
hope you're
tips,
adding
resources?
that, Nate. Are you going to add that to our list?
I did.
Thank
I
you.
added it. It's there. It's there. I didn't go into that much detail, but it's
Great.
on the list.
I
I think
love
it's like number 80 something.
Sweet.
Okay, so this is me getting flustered. I'm off script now.
Well, can I kind of point out something
Please
about
do.
that though too? Because I think in addition to us being generous to our clients, this is a great opportunity for us to be generous with each other. And just the fact that so many people are stepping into Rise to the Top and into other communities that you guys are joining here today, showing support, this is the time where we can engage with each other, help each other, prepare for the future together. This is our time too. So having this opportunity to reach out each other and help, that's going to pay back in spades too. And the more that you can give, the more that's going to come back to you.
Yes. Blanca Gal says, love this. Thank you guys so much for being here. This has been amazing. You guys have all of the links to learn more from Megan. If you're watching the replay, please continue the conversation. I'll be hanging out. Megan's in this group too, answer any questions you guys might have. This has been an honor. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again soon, someday in person and possibly again remotely. Thanks, everybody. This has been fantastic.
Great.
Have a good rest of the day. Cheers.